the level of around 30 million to be able to do that ambitious program. It is a partnership that brings together quite a number of stakeholders, water resource associations, water resource users associations, cooperatives, any organization, grassroots, all the way to national institutions. The county government is playing a very critical role, working very closely with governors. We've got Syngenta, that is Syngenta Foundation, playing a key role. We've got the micro enterprise support program, CETRAD, we've got AGRA coming on board, we've got the CGIR, particularly Excellence in Agronomy, working very closely with a lot of major organizations to build a major program. And therefore we are inviting you to come join us so that we make sure that this program is as inclusive as possible and contributes to conservation without the usual trade-offs that we see between agriculture and the environment. So there is the pillar number. Today we're going to be focusing on the CHEF pillar number 4. CHEF has 5 pillars: the capacity, market systems, regenerative practices, policy, and innovation hubs. So we're going to focus a lot around livelihoods as it relates to market systems, and pillar number 4 a little bit on policy, but a lot on pillar number 5, which is innovation hubs, and they look something like this. Maybe you're feeling hazy, don't worry. So we're in the blue zone at the moment. We're establishing a program in a traditional way. You get seed money from philanthropic sources, and what we're doing is to say, as we establish this program, 2 to 5 years, 3 years to 5 years, there has to be a transition where TNC is the convener. We move to a space where this is going to be a private-public partnership with a lot of finance on board, with a governance mechanism that allows TNC to be a member and not the driver of this. So an innovation hub, foodscape hub, is basically going to have partners who have different officers who represent, or partners, who represent the different interests. And so we're hoping we move from the blue zone to the green zone, and they're about, because we've not designed it fully. As they come on board, they will help us to shape it into something that is solid. We're working very closely with Strathmore University, that has extensive linkages with the private sector and the industry, to see how this can look like. But also we're talking to quite a number of organizations that will help us to get there. I think with those many remarks, I'd like to say thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Michael. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to call all the speakers to the platform all at once so that we can save some time. And I'm going to invite them in the order in which they are going to speak. And so our first speaker is Leah Kasera. As you walk to the front, Leah, I would like to let you know that Leah is the President's advisor on policy and government programs. Welcome to the stage, Leah. Our second speaker will be Mariatu Kamara. Ladies and gentlemen, Mariatu Kamara is the IFAD Country Director. Welcome to the stage, Mariatu. Ladies and gentlemen, our third speaker is Lucy Kioko. Lucy Kioko is the Regional Director, Syngenta Foundation. Welcome to the stage, Lucy. And our fourth speaker is Professor Jacqueline Macleod. So please forgive me if I don't pronounce your name correctly. Professor Jacqueline Macleod. And Professor Jacqueline is a professor at Strathmore Business School. Welcome to the stage, Jacqueline. She's not yet here. She's on her way here. And our last speaker for this afternoon is Mutari Aminu. Mutaru Aminu is the TNC Policy Director for Africa. Welcome to the stage. Now that we've got our speakers ready, I'm going to invite them to the podium. We don't have much time, unfortunately, but 5 minutes will do you some justice, I believe. So you got your 5 minutes, and then hopefully we remain with about 10 to 15 minutes question and answer. Please. Lucy, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, TNC. Thank you, Michael. My title is actually Head of President's Priority Initiatives, and so I coordinate all of President's priority initiatives across the state departments. This is an important conference. I'd like to start from there, and as well an important session this afternoon, because we are talking about issues that we deal with on a daily basis. We deal with food needs daily, but we also have climate challenges that continue to influence how we manage food, how we grow food, and ultimately how we store the food that we grow. I'd like to take it from where Michael left, regenerative agriculture or regenerative food systems. And this takes me back to the basics. The basics in its simplest form, an example from my parents collecting cow manure from the pen, chicken droppings, mulching with dry leaves, and spreading over their 2 acres of land over a period prior to cultivation. And this was to grow food for a family of 10. So this is what most smallholders do. But governments have a greater responsibility. Governments, on the other hand, are expected to feed increasingly growing populations. Farmers as well are looking at opportunities to increase their incomes. And so both these efforts should not be at all costs. My view is that the cost of delivering food security and incomes should matter. We should care what we lose and what we gain, even as we grow food. And so it matters. And so it is key that we find intricate balances between transforming and leveraging foodscapes for our benefits, for restoration, as well as regeneration. Under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, this government has prioritized food systems under 3 pillars. 1, food security. 2, reduce imports. 3, grow exports. And is working with cooperatives and farmer-facing SMEs to strengthen extension and build skills to be able to adapt to changing climate by identifying challenges such as new weather patterns, shorter growing seasons, and finding the right methods to overcome these challenges. One other interesting priority is what you call the agro-processing hubs across Kenya. And this links very well with what Misiko earlier introduced, what you refer to as foodscape innovation hubs. Now, this is one way of leveraging comparative and competitive advantages of regions as well as opportunities, using a one-stop PPP process to promote multi-stakeholder market-based efforts to deliver food security, environmental sustainability, and economic opportunities. And so there's a slide that you showed towards the end that shows different partners around a watering hole. So different partners with different skills, with different values, rallying around a watering hole. And I'd like to see how that plays out, Michael, in the end, that when then there is an intervention on a value chain, then there's a process that conducts an M&E to see what the impact has been in regeneration, in impacting farmers, in impacting women, and improving livelihoods. And so maybe that would be the link that needs to link with that one. Another priority that is aligned with the work that TNC is doing in our countries is agroforestry, which is also a priority of the government. And this, what government is doing is diversifying and intensifying farming systems through the integration of indigenous trees for timber and non-timber forest products. I had a conversation earlier with a colleague about what do we do about fertilizers? How do we handle fertilizers? And the outcome of that conversation was that with our countries and with the need and the demands for food, the urgent demand and need for food security, it's almost impossible not to do with fertilizers, not to grow without fertilizers, not to grow with fertilizers. And perhaps the solution would be, what then? How do we manage our soils so that they are not burdened and so that they can continuously grow food? And so buffering farms to reduce absorption of chemicals and reducing surface runoffs is one thing that we are working on, and we do hope that we can continue to deepen our relationship with TNC, even as we engage at a cooperative level, growing fruit trees that both increase food and nutritional security as well as generating income. There's also the policy issues, and policy issues that drive co-benefits, policy issues that drive trade-offs, and that manage barriers. And there are various policy instruments in place, especially those that provide economic incentives and regulatory approaches, considering how land use decisions are made and how new social and economic forces in the future will influence regenerative agriculture. And so these are some of the points that I wanted to share with you at the beginning, and perhaps when we go into deeper conversations, I can expand further. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call our next speaker, Mariatu Kamara. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I know it's after lunch and people might be tired. So I hope you pay more attention and then we'll have some interesting conversation. My name is Mariatu Kamara. I'm the country director for IFAD in Kenya. Let me start by thanking TNC for this panel. It's a panel of women. Most times when I go for a panel, there's only one man. So this is the opposite of what I've been used to in Kenya. Most times I'll be the only woman amongst men, or maybe two women as an afterthought. But well done for making sure that women, who really matters when it comes to agriculture, are in your panel. I think this was excellent. Thank you. I also want to thank you for the opportunity really for inviting me here as IFAD representative, because as you know, IFAD is not only a United Nations specialized agency, but we are also a financial institution. So when it suits us, we are a UN agency, and when the UN becomes very bureaucratic, we switch to financial institution. We say we are a financial institution, we are not IFAD. We are not a UN. So thank you so much for the consideration. You know, IFAD is the only UN agency with the specific mandate to eradicate poverty and hunger by investing in rural people. We invest in rural people, which means we only work in rural communities. We work with the aim of eradicating poverty in areas where we think people have been left behind, with the ambition of ensuring that no one is left behind. And this is really to speak to the ambition of the 2030 agenda, which is very central to IFAD's mandate. IFAD's mission is to transform rural economies and food systems by making them more resilient, productive, and inclusive and sustainable. We ensure that we work with rural communities. We get to discuss with communities to learn from them what are some of the solutions to ensure that food systems are more sustainable. Our overarching goal is to invest in rural people to enable them to overcome poverty and achieve food security through sustainable and resilient livelihoods. For its part, IFAD is mobilizing climate finance from a variety of sources, including the Green Climate Fund, Global Environment Facility, and our flagship program, the ASAP program. But the question is, the financing that we are mobilizing, the funds that we are mobilizing, are they enough? Are they reaching the right people? Are we targeting the right people? So I think this is something I would like us to bear in mind as we discuss today. How do we ensure that the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid benefit from whatever we are doing? How do we work together in partnership? Because it's becoming more and more clear that no one agency will do this alone. In as much as we're trying to mobilize all the resources, we might not have the technical skills to do it. So that's why we are partnering with agencies like TNC to support rural communities where we work. We might also need to have more funding. That's why we're inviting the private sector. As you know, agriculture, and I keep saying agriculture is not a public entity, sorry to say. Agriculture is a private sector business. Reason being, if you want to buy inputs, it's a private sector business. If you want to offtake, if you want farmers to sell their produce, it's a private sector business. So we really cannot do agriculture without the involvement of private sector. Again, the other thing that we need to bear in mind moving forward is that Africa, as a continent, we need to start taking these things into our own hands. Why am I saying this? If we look at the budget, for Kenya, only 3.4% is allocated to agriculture. What are we saying? We want the country to focus on agriculture, but then we are not allocating the required amount of money to ensure that we get to where we want. So I'm being a bit controversial here, but just so that I can stimulate a discussion around the issue of ensuring that we really allocate more resources to agriculture, particularly in countries like Kenya. Kenya is one country, if you get it right, you will actually get it right in the sub-region. It's like they say, if America sneezes, the world catches cold. I will say if Kenya sneezes, East Africa catches cold. Because Kenya have a great human capacity to deal with agricultural issues. They have the land to really grow crops, although the farmlands are small in Kenya. But we can work through regenerative agricultural practices to increase productivity. We can work with youths to ensure that they have access to finance. Then they can also get involved in agriculture to improve productivity. So I'm saying all this because I believe that Africa, I think if we're going to have three priorities to improve our economy, it should be agriculture, number one. Number two, it should be agriculture. Number three, it should be agriculture. So with these short words, I thank you again for the invite, and I look forward to more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. You are excellent speakers. You are observing time. The bar has been said quite good. So next we'll have Lucy Kioko. Lucy is the Regional Director for Syngenta once again. Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Michael, for inviting us to share what we will be doing or our perspectives within the foodscape, the chef foodscape. So I represent Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture, our East Africa office, and Syngenta Foundation is a Swiss-based organization and is a corporate foundation of the Syngenta Group that supplies or sells or deals in agro inputs. I know it may be a little bit controversial, but I think IFAD speaker before that layer is asking how can we produce enough food to feed us, the growing population, not only in Africa but globally, devoid of synthetic inputs. We indeed need to find a balance. So the mission of the foundation is to work with pre-commercial farmers to catalyze innovations and ensure those innovations finally get into the hands of small-scale farmers. And we do so as well by building the capability of public and private sector to ensure that those innovations actually get out of the market. And at the risk of sounding like I'm advertising Syngenta Foundation, some of the innovations that we have catalyzed include ACA Africa. You may know ACA Africa as a provider or surveyor of weather-indexed insurance. So we have been the pioneers in the area of weather-indexed insurance. We also pioneered in the area of traceability information systems in the name of Farm Force. If you are in the horticulture industry, you may know Farm Force as a way to manage your supply chain, so to ensure that it is traceable for your end market. And across in India, we have catalyzed the Agri-Entrepreneur Growth Foundation as an entity that will build the capability of rural-based entrepreneurs so that they can provide services to small-scale farmers. When we talk about foodscapes, there is food there, and food equals to farmers. And in Africa, the landscape is of small-scale farmers. 60% of agriculture is done by smallholder farmers. Now, ordinarily, in the climate as usual scenario, and I borrow that from the previous session, which was here. In the climate as usual scenario, farmers ordinarily find it difficult to access all the tools they need to be good farmers. That is advisory services. We know today across the world, and even worse in the global south, that we do not have extension workers. And I do not anticipate that we will go back to the pre-80s scenario where there was an extension worker for every 1,000 people. Farmers find it difficult to find, to access, and here access I mean find and purchase high quality inputs, such as seeds, such as agrochemicals, such as biological chemicals, etc. They also find it difficult to sell their products profitably, for them to have a positive return on investment. We've heard here that agriculture is business, and farmers also need to pay bills. They need to pay school fees, they need to go to hospital, they need to buy soap, they need to buy clothes. So they are in agriculture for what it brings. They are in it for money as well. Now the climate as usual scenario is bad enough. Now it is compounded by, or made worse, by climate change. And that's why we are gathered here this week. And in this scenario, farmers need even more support. You know, they need more information, they need more innovations for them to cope with this contemporary issue. One young person in the previous session, which was a youth session, says she's been farming since her early 20s. And frankly, she did not know what she was doing. And climate has made it very tough. Now she's past the threshold of youth, beyond 35, and she still has no clue of how to cope with climate change. It means the information and skills and so on is not readily being transferred to farmers. So how can we cope with this? At the foundation and within the CHEF project, we are charged with ensuring that farmers get the tools that they need as close as possible to them. So we will be having smaller innovation hubs. We'll be implementing smaller innovation hubs in cohorts of 100 to 50 to 200 farmers, led by an entrepreneur who makes a business out of ensuring the farmers have the right knowledge, right attitudes, and the right practice. So those cohorts become nodes where farmers can get you know, all the tools they need to implement regenerative agriculture as well. Those will be nodes of market access, where they can link with the outside world, including buyers, including suppliers of all types of innovations, so that the farmers can get every tool they need to become better in their farming, to cope with climate change, and truly have a positive return on investment in the current context that we live in. And we hope that we can influence not only the Mount Kenya region, but the entire country and the entire East Africa and the entire Africa in organizing farmers in a commercially sustainable manner that will be good for today and good for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, I invite our fourth speaker, Professor Jacqueline McLeod. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Professor McGlade, Jackie McGlade, from Strathmore University here in Nairobi. I want to talk to you a little bit about a partnership that we've been working with over the last 4 or 5 years, funded under the UN, but which has really demonstrated how it's possible to completely change the game around what farmers' knowledge and how they turn it into something real, but where they then replicate and they become catalysts. And I think this is a kind of model for creating food landscapes at scale. So essentially it starts out with what's called the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity. It's a basic natural capital accounting approach, but what we were able to do with approximately 100,000 farmers was to get them to think not only about their land and their farming produce, but to think about their entire asset, including access to water, the human resources, and so forth. And then we went through an exercise that asked the question, as the lived experience, what do you think prosperity looks like? So instead of saying prosperity equals money in the bank, what is prosperity for you? And surprisingly, having repeated this now again and again and again throughout Mount Kenya and all around up the Rift Valley and so on, and Tanzania and other parts of the world, is that quite often people don't talk about money. They talk about health, they talk about education, they talk about nutritious food, many other things. So as we start to work with farmers, small scale or even large, it puts a different perspective on what people really want to see. Of course they want revenues, but then they also want many other things. They want access to many other services. Now, during COVID, a lot of that just got shut down. And so what we really focused on then was going back to basics, going to communities throughout, as I say, the sort of the Mau forest, all the way up Cherangani and down to Loita, out into the Masai Mara, and literally working again with communities to say, do you understand even a business of your farm? So instead of growing wonderful food and then literally looking out at the door of everything that's being sold and then in the house just literally having a garden, wouldn't it be great if you could eat the food that you're growing as well as making profit? So raising the whole actually did was turn the seeing is believing into understanding why things were really different if you took the whole farm as one, as a holistic system. And so for us now at Strathmore, we opened a new centre for natural capital. What we're working at is this lived experience, but accompanying it with accounting, with numbers. So rather than just taking the product and selling it out the door, reflecting on what were the costs to the farm, what I have to not just spend money on, but how was my land? Did my soil health actually go down because I harvested potatoes? We all know that potatoes unfortunately take carbon, strip it right out of the land. So looking at soil, for example, as a carbon asset, instead of just the land that holds the plants you then sell, again, change the conversation. So I'm delighted to say business sense, and also science. So we've been training young people to become citizen scientists to now measure improvements in prosperity, but also improvements in the health of the land, in the trees, in all of the aspects of these little 1 hectare plots. So we've got citizen scientists who are being certified. We have young people then interested in using a lot more technology on the farm. But now, instead of people saying, I've got a hectare of land, they're starting to say, I've got a hectare of land and it stores, let's say, 500 tons of carbon. So they're looking at things in a very different way. And I think of that. I know many people in the room may not approve or think about carbon schemes as being very good, people giving over their land. But if you're in a supply chain and you can demonstrate that what you're doing is net zero, and you can demonstrate so we now have takers of something that's carbon just raising the cost of gone from the seeing is believing. Strong business combination. Food is grown high nutrition value, but also farmers themselves can eat their own food. They don't have to sell it to processors. So I call it the science of deliciousness. Because you have great food and really appetizing these young people food that's really good for them, but we're actually
these distinguished speakers who have really set the scene and who are doing great work together with TNC in the foodscape space. TNC has been in Kenya for more than a decade, including the northern rangelands, but agriculture is relatively recent in our portfolio. But it's making a significant contribution, especially say with the example of our water funds, like the Upper Nairobi water funds. But we have realized that that is something that needed to be grown and expanded, and that's why this foodscape strategy and especially the innovation hub. And the innovation hub comes from TNC's global experience across the world. The innovation hub is modeled around what we call the Nature Vest model. Nature Vest is an in-house impact investment and is part of our impact finance and marketing division at Global. It has so far managed to work with partners to originate, structure, fund, and close investment vehicles to the tune of about $2.4 billion that have been committed since 2014 when it started. Some of the outcomes is managing natural assets sustainably, generating revenue streams that pay for conservation, demonstrating the viability of new markets, and providing scientific input. So a lot of science goes into it because TNC is a science-based organization. In terms of our agricultural strategy, which as I mentioned is quite recent, There are about 5 pillars which Misiko has mentioned, and the Foodscape Innovation Hub is a major one of those pillars. But I am Director Policy and Government Relations at TNC Africa, so I'm glad to see that policy is a major pillar. So welcome to our government representative. I'm glad you are part of the partnership. In Kenya especially, the Foodscape Innovation Hub will be the main investment vehicle for the CHEF, that's the Central Highlands Ecoregion Foodscape. And TNC and its external partners will originate structure fund and close investment vehicles, which are business models that support climate as well as sustain water, biodiversity, and livelihood. And TNC will build on this strong partnership with government, NGOs, communities, and the private sector to build a unique regenerative food system that will achieve conservation outcomes aligned with the deal for conservation commitments and aligned with Kenya's national conservation and agricultural priorities, as mentioned by the government official who is here. One of the things I was so glad to hear here is that farming is a business. And as a business, farming in Africa really employs the largest proportion of our populations. In some countries, as high as 80% of the population is involved in farming. But farming is also a unique business. As far as I know, it's the only business where you fail year in, year out, and then continue without making any profit. So what kind of a business is it? So the aim of this partnership to really make farming pays is really the way forward, I think. And that is negotiating and navigating around several challenges like climate change and others. So I'm glad we are all working together, and we pledge to work even more closely to make farming pay. Thank you.
Thank you. Our time is more or less gone, but I'm going to just open the floor for a question and a half, or something close to that, or a comment. Please, the floor is open. Yeah, please.
I promise to be loud enough. But I could start by introducing myself quickly. I'm Fred Kihara. I do waterfalls. Waterfalls director at the Nature Conservancy. And I also want to give super credit to our panelists. This was great speeches. Just a quick one also to recognize Madam Mariatu, because we would never have done waterfalls in this country if it were not for support from IFAD. And I feel we did not, we missed that one. But the question I also want to ask, which is to her, on the financing part, in particular the non-grant funds, how can we use them, particularly because we're looking at water to basically fuel agriculture, to take care of the source? How can we get borrowers, governments, to allocate some money, build infrastructure to also take care of the green infrastructure that gives birth to the water? Thank you.
Another one more comment. I know this right of reply. Maria, to come back to you. Let's take our two questions first, and we can give the right of reply to the persons asking. One more question, one more comment. I saw a hand here. Oh, there's another one. First with the mic, first goes. You're lucky, it's coming to you. Gender balance. Don't say you are not gender balanced. Forget about this.
Thank you. My name is Anastasia. I work with a consortium called Farm to Market Alliance. We link farmers to markets. The first presenter from Nature Conservancy had shown a big map, which was showing Laikipia and Central, where there's some work that is happening. It would be good to know the impact that that work is going to have. How many farmers or households are you going to impact? Just more information on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I see him already mentioning it, so anyone else wants to know, it's already indicated there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right of reply? Mariatu.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thanks for raising that idea of our support in the waterfronts with TNC. That's a very excellent project. You're asking about non-grants, referring to loans. How do we get governments to take loans that would invest in green infrastructure, correct? So, as you know, IFAD, we provide two sets of support to governments. We provide loans and we provide grants. So when it comes to loans, we work closely with governments to address their needs based on the strategy of the government. I need to make that very clear. So it's the government strategy that we support through our investments project. So what do I mean by that? We work with governments to identify areas where they think they need support, and together with them, we also come up with strategies to address these needs. Then we provide the loans or the grants to the government. So now, when we talk about green investments, we're talking about investments that are sustainable. We're talking about investments that will support natural resource management. But at the same time, we need to understand that governments, in as much as they want to invest in those areas, they also want to support the livelihoods of their communities. The overall goal for the government is to increase food security, make sure that they reduce poverty, and in so doing, address climate smart issues. So for instance, in Kenya, we just concluded a program, I don't know if you've heard about it, the Apatana project. We supported communities to address livelihoods activities, but at the same time, they were also providing support for nature activities like tree planting. But you know, if you support farmers if you encourage farmers just to address natural resource management without providing livelihood support for them, it's going to be very difficult for them to address. So with governments, we encourage them to address both the livelihoods activities and also provide green infrastructure to support natural resource management.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I know you want to say something. Can you say it in 30 seconds? Yeah.
In Kenya, we have a devolved governance structure, as you know. And if you do what we did, which was get 6 counties together with major sources, for example, in the water tower, actually they do have money in their budgets for greening. And so we have been able to protect through riparian groups and community groups precisely that. So there's a way to tap into government funds, but it has to then have the sort of benefits to community add to it. So I think you've got to find your way in, is what I'm saying, but it has worked, and we have restored the source of the Mara River in that way.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been great. We've heard from the policymaker. We've heard about what Kenya cares about, food security, reducing imports, and growing exports, very relevant for the rest of the continent. What is the rest of us doing about this? We are talking about regenerative agriculture. We are talking about working with rural communities who do most of the work in terms of agriculture and addressing these priorities. And we are talking innovations. We are talking about private sector partnering with us. We are talking about sustainability moving forward. Good job. So what is it we are hinting at, and we're not saying it loudly? What you're saying is that agriculture can pay for itself. And therefore, it makes a good business case for investors, for governments, and other stakeholders in the ecosystems. And we're also saying that regenerative agriculture is not only good for food security and the fight against hunger, but it's also a big win for climate action. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. Thank you. Well done. This has gone very well. Requesting for a group photo. Anyone who is up for it, please come. The presenters. The presenters. And group photo with the presenters, and anybody would like to join, actually.
Come, our rapporteurs, come. These are our formal rapporteurs, by the way.
Yeah.
So can they come
Oh,
and join
yeah,
us?
rapporteurs, come.
There are young rapporteurs.
Oh, they are.
Yes.
Great.
They've been taking notes.
Oh, great, great.
Very good. Hello. Right. You're our rapporteurs. Come, come, come. No gender balance.
Let's balance the pressure.
Where is Misiko?
Michael, you're missing out. Come. Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
Great. Gosh, thousands.
Thank you.
Well done, ladies.
Thank you.
Scribbling and taking notes. It's brilliant.
Yeah.